meeting to order at 5:30. And do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
We do not.
We do not. Okay, good. Then we will move to approval of the minutes of the meeting of March 27th. And if you would like to make a motion, David, to approve those minutes.
I move to approve those minutes.
So it's been moved, and I will second to approve the minutes of March 27th. And we don't have Laura Chapman is not here tonight, so it's just the two of us. So moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Let's see. So public comment on items not on the agenda. And I believe somebody, and I think you're the only person I don't know in the crowd, so it might be you.
Yes.
So if you could, Child Care Counts Coalition of Wyndham County.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Hi. I'm Chloe Learey. I'm the Executive Director of the Winston Prouty Center. And I'm here representing the Child Care Counts Coalition, which we convened a little over a year ago. It's a cross-sector group of people, including BDCC, the Downtown Business Alliance, CCB, Wyndham Regional Career Center, a whole bunch of people who are thinking about how we can maintain and increase childcare capacity in the region. Because it's such an important part of economic development, which we realize a lot of people don't know. And so in April, we celebrate the month of the young child in Wyndham County. There are lots of activities, and we thought it was a good opportunity to just raise awareness about this issue in different places, including in towns, because you might not know how important it is. So really the impetus for this was a couple months ago, you may have heard a program in Brookline was gonna close, and families got like 2 weeks notice, 52 kids were not gonna have care. And it was a mix of after school and early learning, but 2 weeks and what we're gonna do, and there's just no capacity. Fortunately, somebody bought the program and it's still running, but it really highlighted how fragile the sector is and what's, out in Brookline, there weren't really a lot of options. So it felt like, again, a good opportunity to sort of raise awareness about why it's important and whether or not anybody can do anything about it, at least knowing and where your community touches it, or if it's in your town plan or something you just want to be aware of. So in that example, I think it's really shows the ripple effects of childcare closing. So it's a business that closed, so buys goods and services, employs people, and so that's lost when it goes. And then families who rely on it to be able to participate in the workforce, suddenly they can't in the same way, so they might even leave their jobs. So then they aren't making money and they can't pay their rent, or residents can't pay their taxes, or there's a whole sort of economic development, economic impact there. And then employers who employ folks suddenly have maybe lost productivity because their employees can't get to work. And in an environment where we have less than 3% unemployment, this is not a great time to lose workers. So sort of the ripple effects of one business closing, because it's a business that allows people to participate in the workforce or enables them, I think is far reaching and maybe further reaching than people realize. So when we think about sort of a 2-generational approach to economic development, so people, parents, families can participate in the workforce, and then we're growing our future workforce also. So we know brain science recently, or not actually recently, it's just become more obvious, well known. 80% of the brain is developed by the age of 3 and 90% by age 5 before kids even get to school. So this time of life, it's all kind of early education, and high quality learning environments sort of build the skills that we want people to have as they go to school and then as they go to grow into community members. So thinking about childcare as having that full impact, I think, is a helpful lens when we think about what do we want in our communities and in our region and in our state. And what's really striking, the aging demographic of Vermont, I hear a lot about trying to attract young people to come to Vermont and incentives. We'll give you $5,000 to move here, whatever those things are. But really a critical piece of infrastructure is childcare. And if we want young people to come here, that's got to be a part of the puzzle. So really thinking about, again, how do you interface with it in your community, and then just being aware in our state of what's happening. People, I've heard a couple different arguments about, some people say, well, it's better for kids to be at home. Like, let them stay home with their families. That's great if it works. And in the reality of our world is that we need 2-income households usually to make it work economically. So that's just not a necessarily viable option unless we find other ways to support people to stay at home. And then I've also heard people say, well, don't have kids if you can't afford them. Okay, fair enough. And it's not just the family who, we need, if we want vibrant, growing communities, it's something we all have to worry about. It's not just about one family being able to afford having kids. So just some things to think about. Putney is actually pretty vibrant in terms of childcare. I don't know if you know what programs you have. No? So, yep, you have Wildflowers, Elm Lee. So Putney Central School has a pre-K program. And I realized I left my glasses in the car, and actually I have, let me give you, here, I have informational folders for you. There's a list in here of programs that, there's one for Laura, it's not here. So that's actually a lot. I think there are some good options. And in terms of infants, I think it's Elm Lee that takes infants. So infants and toddlers is really a pressure point. So I don't know if you know anybody who's pregnant and is looking for childcare, but I hope they're on some waiting list somewhere because it can be really hard to get into a program. So that's really infants and toddlers, and that's 0 to 3. And then 3 to 5-year-olds is sort of what we call preschool. So I think you're fortunate in Putney to have some good programs. And again, just being aware of it as an issue as you think about town planning. I think it's a good thing to know. There's a child care bill actually in your folders. H531 passed out of the House unanimously, and it's a state level sort of infrastructure bill around supporting increased financial assistance and that sort of thing. It was so our Windham County delegation is supportive. So if you want to say thanks to Mike or Notter, or let Becca and Jeanette know that we really appreciate them supporting childcare. They're very aware of these issues, but if you see them on the street, say thanks for supporting childcare. So, so yeah. And if you have any questions, or if you want to get involved or want to learn more, I'm happy to be a resource for you.
Just anecdotally today ran into somebody whose 3-year-old is going to Wildflowers, and apparently, and I don't know this from personal, but she told me, they had 5 openings for which there were 18 potential people to fill the slot. And I believe, Kevin, I don't know whether you know, but I'm pretty sure Elm Lee has a wait list all the time.
Yes.
So it's, even with what we have, and you're right, we're better off than some, but even with what we have.
Well, and my guess is you're drawing from, Putney will be drawing from places that, they're sort of childcare deserts.
Yes.
So like Brookline, Sunny Lane was it. I mean, you could get over to Mount Snow or kids in the country, but it's really, in Brattleboro is also a little resource rich. So families might figure out like, oh, if I work in Brattleboro, I can drive through Putney and drop, like that's sort of the puzzle. But waiting, we have a big waiting list at Prouty, and it's really, and you can't, it's just such a, maybe you have space to open another classroom, but can we find the teachers? So there's a workforce development piece. And why aren't people getting into the field? It doesn't pay very well, but we can't raise tuition because then it makes it more unaffordable for families. So it's just a big puzzle to solve. But I'm glad that you all have 5 programs at least, and they're really great programs. I mean, our region is actually lucky. We have a lot of 5-star programs and people who are really invested. So that's great. So.
Good.
That's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for giving me time. I really appreciate it. I'm going to scoot and go to Dummerston now. Fill them in.
Tell them we don't have any space. Any other public comment on items not on the agenda? That was sort of on the agenda, but later edition. So.
No action.
So next on the list is select board items for discussion and action. And first in our category there is capital improvement, the library staining, and a memorandum of understanding. And we received paperwork about this, requesting that we go ahead and my recollection is that we go ahead and fund it sooner rather than later is your hope, and if one or all of you want to address that, that would be great.
I can address that. The staining is probably the most emergent issue in our capital needs. It's also one of the first capital improvements that's had to be made to the building, which is still relatively new. At this point, it's 15 years old, and the staining, especially on the south side, is really starting to fade. And just in interest of keeping the library in good shape, we'd love to go forward with the staining program, because it's also one of the first capital improvements that we're making. It's kind of our first time that we're going to exercise the memorandum of understanding that we wrote together last year, or that we signed last year. It was written, it was a process, but it just because the library was built with donations, the memorandum of understanding was just sort of to recognize that it's a town building, and that the trustees would also like to have a hand in any bid processes or, you know, capital improvements that we take on. So I'm sure you guys are really used to going out to bid for projects for town buildings, but we're not. So we're kind of here to hear what the plan would be, you know, for taking on the staining and soliciting bids and that kind of thing.
Well, we typically put anything over roughly the 5,000 mark out for bid, and we have legal requirements surrounding that. Sometimes we just solicit bids from people who we know might be interested. Sometimes we post it in the Reformer or elsewhere, Commons, etc. So I think we would probably leave that to our town manager to decide. And I did see that you had already a bid from somebody, is that correct? From,
Yeah, a year old. It's over a year.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, just when I was getting quotes to initially get this onto the town's capital plan and the town report, I was just looking for quotes, and I got in touch with the people that initially did the project when the building was first built, to ask them, and also to just let them know that the project we weren't hiring them or even, that wasn't a bid, it was just a quote for it, and that we were hoping the project would come up in the next couple of years, and that we'd certainly let them know.
Okay. And that was Momini who did it when it was first done?
Yes.
Okay. So I would assume we certainly will go out to bid for it. We're staying roughly the same color, is that the idea?
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then, you know, usually the process would be that we would solicit bids from as many people who are interested, and then have a public opening of those bids in order to evaluate them. On bigger projects and state-funded projects, we have much more rigid criteria. On something like this, it's more to our discretion as to who and why we would bid, but it's also up to the town manager to make sure that proper insurances are in place, et cetera, in order to make, we have certain requirements surrounding that are either policy and or passed on to us by our insurance company. So most of the bigger companies that do this kind of thing have those types of insurance. How would you like to proceed with the bidding process, or are you thinking we're ready to go out to bid on it? Do you want to think a little bit more about our budgeting currently and see where we're at?
So I would have to look at the budget.
Yeah.
So in the capital reserve, we do have about $36,365 that's undesignated.
Mm-hmm.
So we could look at that.
Yeah.
What I would recommend to the library is you're gonna decide when you wanna do your project. So it's gonna take a little while. We'll get an invitation to bid. We can solicit the bid to certain contractors. I would recommend we put it in the Brattleboro Reformer as well, and be fair, because there might be other contractors that we don't know about. 3 bids, if we can get at least 3 bids, that's usually the standard. So we're gonna have to put it out to bid, and then we have to have a schedule when, you know, you want the project done. We're gonna need like the scope of the work, basically. I don't know if you want the contractor to go over and look at the building so they know what they're getting into. And then we'll decide. There'll be a recommendation, and the trustees can have a say also with the bids. And then it'll be up to the select board.
And we are not required to take a lowest bid.
Right.
We sometimes do, sometimes don't, depends on, various other factors, based on how the bid was presented and reputation, et cetera. So sometimes we sift through them a little bit, but, yeah, I mean, obviously your project is an exterior project, so it would want to be this summer, but not right away because it's still a little cold for standing. So I think we would just look at availability of funds and then what the sort of window, I don't know whether they're, it won't affect your function much. I mean, there might be a day, when they're right around the front door, et cetera, that you might want to either limit hours or close or something, but they're pretty good at working around that kind of thing as well, so it might not be an issue for you at all. But odor could be an issue, but I'm guessing it's a latex-based stain, so that might not be that much of an issue, but I don't know, that would be sort of determined by, I mean, I'm sure Mominy, for example, would know what the original stain was that was used, and we have as-built drawings, so we know what it is.
So it could take up to a month from the start of your bidding process until a bid is awarded. And also contractors like this are already scheduling.
Yes.
So we don't want to hold off too long.
Do we want to get that process started really soon, or should I come and meet with you and we can?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Say we're hoping it would happen this summer, so if we can get it started.
Right. The other thing too is, do you want to do it this fiscal year or you want to do it in the next fiscal year?
That, I would say that's up to you, i.e. July 1st,
Right.
before or after July 1st.
Yeah.
So-
And we may not have a choice
Yeah.
because of the contractor.
Yeah.
So we're already, almost mid-May here.
Does it need to fall within one fiscal year, even though it's a capital project?
No, but it makes the bookkeeping
I'm
easier.
sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Ideally,
Right.
Yeah, ideally, the billing would all happen, it'll probably, the billing will probably happen in next fiscal year then.
Okay.
I mean, that's my guess, but.
Yeah. I mean, it's up to the contractor and his schedule too.
Or her schedule,
Her, their schedule.
their schedule.
How's that?
The-
I stand corrected. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what was that?
That you guys are, that you post it, that you post the bid.
I thought you guys were doing that.
Well, that's what we want to be really clear about, is
Yeah.
who does what part of this process, because we haven't done it, so we want to know like what, and then we need to know the wording. We meet with you and talk about the specific wording.
It's a
Make sure that we're doing
It's a
it.
public billing, so we can take charge of the bidding process, but obviously we would want your input when the bids come in, so.
Are the bids evaluated at a select board meeting, or do we have a meeting with the trustees?
It depends on how many bids we get,
Okay.
I mean, we can sit down initially and then we can make a recommendation to the select board. But usually I put everything down on one piece of paper and then we can compare,
Okay.
so.
That will also depend on time frame. I mean, number of bids
Right.
will depend on time frame. I mean, if
Yeah.
we, for example, said it had to be done by July 1, we're likely to lose a couple people right off the bat just
Right.
because they wouldn't be able to do that. But we're still early enough to probably have good luck with most people. But yes, I would say just go out to bid sooner rather
Yeah.
than later.
It's not
All right.
falling apart.
Yeah, it's not.
No.
But we can get it going.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can award the bid and then
Do it in July.
even if they start in July, that's fine. But
So Emily, if you want to sit down with Karen and just sort of figure out the details of that. I mean, you obviously have scope of work, et cetera,
Right, we
but
have the scope
if there are other.
I would think about contractors that you might want to solicit.
Okay.
If there, and if you don't, if you don't have any, don't worry. I mean, by
We do.
posting it and or,
Yeah.
previous experience, we have at least a few that we would
Great.
recommend,
Right.
so.
Okay. Well, I'll come meet with you either tomorrow or the next day, or later?
No,
this week?
how about after?
Oh, wait, after you get back,
April 22nd?
after you get back from vacation.
May 1st, May 1st. I mean, visiting you in North Carolina would be nice. So I'm back April 22nd,
Okay, great.
Emily.
All right, I'll probably meet you on the 23rd.
Okay, that's fine. And then, yeah, we can discuss it,
Okay.
all right?
Great.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Have a really good vacation.
Thank you.
All right. So next, Putney Historical Society, Lease of Town Hall. And we have, I believe, the Bartons here to discuss that, I'm guessing. Are you waiting, were you hoping Lisa or somebody else might also?
No, I have no idea who else was coming, probably nobody. And we're just here to kind of find out where things are at.
Mhm. Karen?
So, we had Tom Goddard did an inspection of the upstairs, along with Wade, and he is our BLCT passive insurance carrier. So they did the inspection. There's some things that need to happen. And the select board needs to know that before anybody occupies the upstairs, there has to be a certificate of occupancy. And Tom has a list of things that needs to be done before that can even happen. So there's 17 items on Tom's inspection.
Mostly fairly straightforward, or not
They're
so much?
straightforward, but they're probably gonna be costly items. And I understand the Historical Society is willing to go out and get grant money to do renovations upstairs. And you're looking to lease the upstairs for like 99 years or so.
We would, if we were going to go out and get grant money, particularly if we were going to go out and look for a lot of money, yeah, we would need a long-term arrangement.
A permanent home is
Yes.
basically what the
Yeah.
Historical Society is looking for. And,
Yeah, we've been kind of nomads here for
Yeah.
a while.
let me just see what. Do you have Wade's email in your packet? You have it right there.
Yeah, I mean, as Karen implied, I mean, I'm not gonna read through all of these because they're fairly
Well, I would
lengthy.
need a copy of the list.
Of course, but, you know, for example, the first one on is a full coverage automatic and monitored fire sprinkler system shall be installed. So we all know right off the bat that that's nothing cheap, so.
Yeah.
And includes all areas of the building, including the basement and attic. So, existing fire alarm should be modified, exit signs and emergency lighting shall be installed, sheetrock installed in basement stairwell, basement door self-closing, sheetrock installed in the storage closet door needs to be changed, penetrations between levels shall be properly fire sealed, fire separation provided between floors, which I believe we probably have, but I don't know 100%.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Appropriate, let's see, existing oil burner emergency switches be relocated, approved handrails installed on interior stairs, height of the existing guardrail serving the second floor mezzanine has to be increased, and accessory rooms and spaces contiguous to the stage be separated from each other, electrical work has to meet an FBA. Building and second floor assembly area shall be accessible with current ADA requirements. That might be the biggest stumbling block of all, because that might require an elevator of some
Well,
sort.
I would expect that it would require an
Yeah.
elevator.
Yeah, so, And then improvements shall be made to existing catwalk, existing rear exterior emergency egress stair inspected for current and long-term structural integrity, which it's been looked at, but I don't think it's ever had an engineer's stamp on it yet. So, you know, that's a sizable list. The other thing, and I don't know whether you talked to Tom about this, but most of these things, I would guess, are governed largely by volume of occupancy. I mean, I'm guessing, and I could be totally wrong here, that, for example, historical society members might be able to access and use the space in the meantime while this is getting completed.
Yes.
You just wouldn't be able to have any sort of public gatherings at all.
Right.
So, and I know that public gatherings are not really, for the most part, your thing, but.
We do not generally have public gatherings.
Right.
We have an annual meeting where we have maybe 6 or 8 people there.
Right.
Which is.
I wouldn't call that a public gathering, really.
So we probably ought to clarify with Tom, and again, I don't know whether you've had that conversation with
No,
him,
no.
sort of what this means as far as occupancy versus, because, you know, he may well have been I know it's all been evaluated previously, and most of this, I think, is somewhat based on the same thing, for if we were gonna use it for a community space
Yeah,
per se.
Right.
So if we're not using it that
Meeting place,
way,
Yeah.
this list might change. So it would be worth exploring that, because otherwise it's going to be quite a while before all this is done.
Yeah.
So in the interest of allowing you all at least to be up there and working, et cetera, it might be worth having that conversation with Tom and seeing what differentiates it from public gathering.
So are you open usually in the summertime? If you were operational and you were open, would you be open spring to fall or one Sunday a month?
We generally, we are open to the public
Okay,
on Saturdays from 10 to 1,
Okay.
year round.
okay.
We don't have great huge crowds of people standing at the door waiting to get in on any particularly.
Not every Saturday.
No.
Not every Saturday at least. We might one Saturday. I don't know if we give away free toasters or something like that, we might.
Yeah.
But, now for instance, I was there last Saturday and had one person come in.
Right.
Yeah,
But,
So I think we should check that with Tom and see what the limits are that they need to work around in the short
Okay.
run, and whether you want to do that or ask
I
the
mean,
historical
most
society. to-
of our collection is still
Already
up
here.
there.
Yeah,
And I would like not to have to move it,
right.
because we've moved it 2 or 3 times already.
yeah.
Where are you operating from now? Are you?
We have an office and a storage room over at the next stage, the old church.
Okay.
Um,
And that's where, like, that's where their open hours are.
that's where our hours are.
Take stuff from here.
I mean, we share the office over there with the next stage group. But we do have one room, maybe half the size of this area, for storage, but it certainly won't hold all the stuff we've got upstairs.
And you
Plus,
like-
we have those 2 enormous cases up there,
Right.
Yeah,
which we paid a lot of money to get taken up there. They were in that room.
yeah.
And we paid a lot of money to get those taken up there, and we really don't want to pay a lot of money
Right.
to take them out.
I have a question, Ruth.
Yes?
Do you know if your property upstairs is insured?
I asked that question at our last board meeting, and the answer was yes.
Okay, all right. That's good.
Well, yes.
So, yeah, I mean, the other thing that would be nice about having that whole space, if you could use it, is you could have permanent displays that were
Right.
significant and
Yes.
available in general, so that would be nice, but.
And ideally, we could have, you know, it could be used by the community for
Absolutely.
other things.
Yeah, yeah.
But a lot of those things on that list have nothing to do with the upstairs. You know, like the basement.
They have to do with the safety of the upstairs, which of course is Tom's.
Well, they have to
purview,
do with the
so-
safety of the whole building.
That's true.
But it sounds to me like he wants to enclose the stairs.
Just the basement stairs, he's
Right.
talking.
Oh,
So,
because I was gonna say, you get into that, and that's historic stuff.
yeah.
Right.
And that's a little different.
No, I think a lot of this is really directed at gatherings.
Yes,
but-
like 250 people or more.
Exactly.
Yes, right.
Which,
Right.
but even if it's, probably even if it's 22 or more,
Right.
it meets a certain criteria that would have to
Yes.
be
Yes.
dealt with. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think that you'd need to explore that with Tom and then come up with some parameters, whether they're included in the lease initially or,
Right.
you know, an understanding so that until such time that, you know, X, Y, and Z were done, you wouldn't have gatherings greater than Y, you know, then,
And of course, the next step actually is to take the list to somebody who does these particular types of work and get at least a base estimate of
Yeah.
how much they would
Right.
cost.
Yeah.
So that you know how much money you're going after. Because if you're gonna write a grant, I don't know a lot about grant writing, but I do know that you have to have some idea of how much money you're gonna need for your project.
Right.
yes. Yeah, no, I think there would be a whole, you know, really, you'd have to come up with an entire scope of work and bid, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, sort of. Lisa, of course, is very familiar with most of this stuff because she deals with all these historic buildings, so.
We're
she
hoping that
would-
we can get her out from under running a store so she
I
can do
know.
some of this
She
stuff.
might at least be willing to have a
Well,
conversation
she,
about
I
it
mean,
to
she,
start with.
yeah, she would
so,
help us with it all she could, but
Yeah,
she's,
she's busy.
has several hats already.
Yes, she does. So, but I guess I would just reiterate, as we've said before, you know, we're happy to explore this as a possibility and a likelihood for you all, you know, how we get from where we are now to getting A, to a point that you could use it, and then B, to a point where we might be doing some or all of the stuff on this list,
Right.
would be a different question, so.
Yeah,
And that, again, is mostly up to Tom.
but at
And
least
some of
having the list is a start.
Yes, yeah. So,
So I can get you a copy of that.
Okay,
And maybe we put some numbers to it and see where we're at.
yeah,
And then we can discuss.
yeah. No, and based on that study that was done, I mean, there was a study of renovation of the whole building done in roughly 2004, probably, something like that.
yeah, I recall that there was
Somewhere
one
there.
done at some point.
And, you know, some of those costs you might be able to extrapolate from that, just, you know, adding 4% per year or something, but
10%.
for, yeah,
Right,
who
right.
knows,
Right.
you know? But some of it is very basic. I mean, you know, putting a self-closing door on the basement is not that hard to
Right.
do, but,
So we can probably
Someone
get
start.
numbers from that study, the feasibility study.
Okay,
And some of that I might I can get from Tom perhaps, you know.
you can certainly also get names, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
Southern Vermont, Washburn, you know, Southern Vermont, the sprinkler guys are, and then, you know, sheetrock, I can give you names. I mean, there's any number of different
Right.
things.
so I'm assuming that at this point, none of this building has sprinklers?
That's correct. Yeah. And fortunately for us, I believe, and I could be wrong, but, you know, something that would have changed since 2004 is the use of, you know, it used to be that sprinklers all had to be in iron pipe. I don't think they do anymore, which changes the equation.
Okay.
But that may not be true for a public building.
Right.
That may only be true for residential.
I know it's all
But-
iron pipe at the store.
Yes, yeah, and that may still be true for all public buildings, but.
Because that was what, 2008, 9? we did that.
at least when it got rolling, yeah, certainly. And I could be totally off base, it could all need to be an iron pipe still, which,
I know it's
Expensive
iron pipe,
prospect.
I've hit my head on it a few times.
it's hard. Makes sense, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it probably can't be PEX, because if it melted through on the
Right,
first floor,
right,
it probably
yeah.
good to the second floor, so.
Yeah,
All right, so there's a starting point.
yep. So it's gonna evolve, but hopefully.
After you get back from vacation.
Yes.
And after you wrestle Lisa out of the general store.
Oh, we all hope that will happen
Yeah.
soon, but.
Yeah.
So we will get some more information and bring it back
All
to the
right,
select board, and
Go from there.
thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to the store and get some supper.
All right.
Good. All right. I'm guessing Carl might be here for the purpose of questioning about the tax exempt committee. Karen and I had a conversation about this today. I don't know whether, David, you relayed any of that to David, but, we don't really have a charge for you right now, Carl. I think that, we talked about today that question that came up about the percentage of our grand list that is tax exempt and sort of how does that affect us. And I know that most of that data is available in the report that you all did already. So doing a little bit of analysis on that would be interesting. But the other thing that comes into play, and I don't think you explored it much, was how much of that is statutory, how much could we change if we were to choose to change? And I don't know how much that's been explored.
Well, the laws have changed since then anyway, so we have to
Revisit
I
it.
think concerning Landmark College,
Yeah.
that's different now.
They've increased the amount, I believe they've broadened the parameters of statutorily exempt, I believe.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So it may turn out that the only parts you could change are taxing solar arrays and the veterans exemption and, what else? Pretty small
Yeah.
stuff. It would be easy enough for me to just update with Jordy percentages and what's changed. I did that informally with him.
Yeah.
And he says there's not a whole lot that's changed.
Yeah.
So I guess I would wonder if you'd have anything you wanted to do with the data. The data's gonna stay pretty much the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, really what Karen and I talked about is just whether in order, and it's been a while since I've looked at that report, whether there would be a way to lay some of that data out in a way that somebody who was asking questions about the exempt properties would be able to sort of make comparisons in a simpler way. But it may be,
Certainly present the data
yeah,
in an easier way. We can't anticipate the questions. But
No.
we could put it in a spreadsheet or something, an Excel file.
might
There you
be,
go.
might be
That's-
a valuable
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah.
I don't know what the value of that would be, other than, I think that ease of explanation would be nice.
What are the questions you're having to explain?
Well, most basically, as we already talked about, the question of what percentage of the grand list is tax exempt and how does that affect our taxes? And again, unless you were to go in and really examine that pretty close as to the statutory exemptions, it doesn't make that much difference. The other thing that's a little tricky about it is when you look at our grand list and the values of Putney School and Landmark in particular, but Greenwood and the grammar school also add to it, it's a big number. I mean, it's over $100 million. But our grand list is 227 million or something right now, but that grand list doesn't include those properties. So in order to come up with an accurate number of what the percentage is, you'd have to, add them together, then subtract the statutorily exempt parts, et cetera. That's an equation that would be easy to do, but it's an exercise that would have to be done in order to make it straightforward. And once you got to that point, what good does it do you? I'm not sure.
Okay, well, if we're not sure what good it would do, how about if I prevail on Jordy to go through this with me, and we can come up with those percentages. He's up on statutory and not statutory as well. So if he'd be willing to put a couple hours into it with me, we could just produce those figures.
That would be great. I think that would be useful,
Yeah.
just for reference, if nothing else. And to have this, they come up, as you know, semi-regularly at town meeting for various different reasons.
And gravel pit meeting, I remember.
And what?
Came up with the gravel pit.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it did.
Percentage of, how do these things affect our taxes? I'm clear, and I continue to be clear, at least in my own mind, that, all of those institutions are very important to the livelihood of our town, and we don't want to, I wouldn't think we'd want to try and chase them out of town by trying to tax them for things that would be a burden to them. Full disclosure, I'm also on the board of Putney School, so I'm biased in that respect, but I think that, both of them employ huge numbers of people in town, provide tremendous amounts of, and I know we've had this conversation, I know that you're not looking, but we have had, for example, a lister in the past who said, we really need to be going after every tax dollar we can out of the schools. I think it's something one can look at, but I think it's a little bit of a slippery slope, so.
Don't the schools usually make payment in lieu of taxes?
They do,
As their
although.
normal vehicle when they do make those?
Correct. We are basically on a 5-year cycle of agreements with them, and it's coming up next year, I believe, for renegotiation.
Yeah.
When you look at what the, again, since they're not on the grand list, it's a little hard to bring it up, but when you look at their grand list value versus what they make in donations, there's a large discrepancy between their donations and the taxes they would potentially pay. But again, if we were to really dramatically increase that tax burden, I think we'd be putting burdens on, and they both contribute to the town in many other ways too.
Right.
I mean, Landmark contributes financially. They both open to events regularly for various different purposes, not necessarily town events, but they're very integral parts of the community. So, but I think if you were willing to do that with Jordy, I think that would be great.
That's a good starting point. I don't want to be a waiter of coal on a non-functional committee.
Yeah, no, and we sort of talked about it, and other than that, right now, I don't see a significant role for the tax exempt committee, but it would be nice to have that information a little bit clearer.
Let me see what I can do with Jordy.
That'd be great.
They're coming up on a busy part of the year,
Yeah,
so it might be a while.
that's fine. I would think, the most useful time to have it would be at around town meeting time, that gives you a long window. I don't think you probably need that long, but
Those
whatever.
long windows don't last as long.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's a really good idea to do this, because I know before I sat here and had even the tiniest clue of how the town is run, I know I had a skewed idea of how, what the values of the school were, how they contributed, what's equitable. If you have a private school, it's making a lot of money and they're not contributing to the community, they ought to in some way. If they're just barely getting by, well, then they shouldn't. And I had no idea what that is, so it'd be good to get that information out to people, so that I think the general public doesn't have a misconception of what that is. And if they are doing really well, they ought to contribute in whatever way they should contribute, and we ought to know what those percentages are. I know, I would have liked to know that, so, yeah.
And particularly right now, if we've been seeing in the news, institutions of higher education are under tremendous pressures. So, their challenges financially are as significant now as they've ever been for both of those institutions. It's very easy to look at what they charge and think about, wow, well, if you just take the number of students and multiply it by the amount of money that they charge for tuition, they're bringing in huge amounts of money. Two factors hugely affect that. One, large numbers of students on scholarship, and also their operating budgets are huge. So, when you see that amount of money coming in, the reality of how much of that money actually, they're both nonprofit organizations, so nobody's making a chunk of money off it. They try and pay livable wages to everybody at a minimum and significant salaries as they're able, but they're facing big challenges.
And their books are open anyway.
Their books are open.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
They have 990s. They could be looked at as to, again, they're both nonprofits. Nobody's putting a big check in their pocket from any of these. So,
I think
that would be great.
those figures would be useful to you as you start figuring out the next 5-year cycle with them.
I think that's true. Definitely.
Yes.
And that's
probably good
before-
timing.
That's before, exactly, when we would ideally be doing that would be during budget season
Yes.
in sort of late summer to fall
Yeah.
kind of thing, and having a sense of where those might be.
Yeah.
So that would be it.
Okay, and I know part of the report that we couldn't really quantify services provided by the town. We could count number of emergency calls,
Yeah.
number of this, number of that, but that didn't really arrive at a dollar figure. So that was very difficult to pin down. I'm not sure we could do it any better.
Well, Tom's record keeping probably hasn't changed much in any way, but one thing that would affect that a little bit is that we are paying, we do pay a base wage now to some of the on-call firefighters. Also, if you just strictly look, for example, with rescue, you look at what our assessment is, you look at the percentage of calls that go there versus somewhere else, those are all numbers that would be
Sheriff's
helpful.
Department
Exactly, all
contracts
of these
gone up.
things, so, yeah.
You
Animal
might be able
control.
to come up with a guess as to how much, if Putney School and Landmark and the Grammar School and Greenwood, I guess there's 4,
Yeah,
did not require services. If they weren't there, what would
How
the
would
town's
that
billing be like?
yes, what would that do?
Tom will have that information, Carl.
I'm sorry?
Tom will have that information, because I talked to him about that. I said, can you generate a log of how many calls, like, to Landmark, and then the other 3 schools? So we can see the volume,
Right.
But like you said, I don't know if you can put a dollar amount on that,
Yeah.
but we can look at the contracts and then maybe back out of that by the
Yeah.
amount of calls.
And you could, we could analyze that
Right.
just statistically with
Right.
percentages of calls that go to those
Yes.
institutions as opposed to, what our overall budget is
Right.
and how much goes this.
But
You know, that doesn't,
you'd still want a fire department.
absolutely.
You'd still want.
Right, no, it
Yes.
wouldn't be a direct correlation, but it would give you a sense of
Yeah.
where we're at. The other thing I don't know, a huge amount of Tom's work certainly for Putney School and for Landmark and presumably for the others, is doing inspection work. And I don't know whether he charges for that. My guess is he charges for some of it and not for some of it, based on whether it's state inspection, local
Right,
inspection, so
right.
on and so forth. So, if we are generating some revenue from
Right.
those organizations, that would come into that as well. And I don't know.
That's a good question.
I don't know
I
whether we
never
do or
thought
not.
to ask him about that.
I'm not sure, because he
Yeah.
spends a lot of time just going and, talking through whether it's
Right.
alarm systems or sprinklers or access or,
Yeah.
and I don't know whether he charges for that or
Yeah.
not. I'm not sure how he does it.
That's your job, not mine.
Yes,
So
definitely.
we'll happily
So,
let that one on.
good.
All
All right,
So I'll get together with Jordy and I'll let you know.
sounds great. Thank you.
And when are you really going on vacation?
Tomorrow.
Oh, good.
She's actually leaving.
Don't
Don't
let
know.
her.
Yeah, we're changing the locks tonight at midnight, so.
As soon as the
See
meeting's
you,
over,
Carl, thanks.
out. I'll give Alyssa my key.
All right, annual financial plan, town highways approval.
Okay,
So
this is the annual.
we already did something, I think, somewhat similar to this.
What
Maybe
we,
not, I mean, we do,
no, we certified,
That's right,
our mileage
sure, right.
for highways.
Yeah.
So town highways, roads, and then this is based off of that
the amount of
certification.
mileage, right?
So basically, David, so the state gives us like grant money for improving roads, culverts, whatever. And so it's based on how many miles of roadway we have in town
Okay.
that we have to maintain and keep up. So the state, V-Trans, Mark Pickering and Megan Brunk came up, sat with Brian and I, and went over our numbers. And so the lower the total, the better off we are. But first we have the paving project in there this year, and we're doing another culvert. So Yeah, yeah. So, in order to get grant money, we have to do this annual financial plan every year.
And the other thing that really helps us in this is when we do things well, they look favorably upon that.
Got it.
So, when we, and I have to give,
Accurate information on time, so easy to read, they go through the process and instead of beating us up for details, are much more willing and prompt about outcome.
absolutely.
Got it.
And also, to Brian's credit, and, significantly, Brian has brought in a lot of grant money since his time in the highway department. And there's a couple factors in that. One, he really pays attention to it with Karen and/or whoever the manager
Right.
has been at the
Right.
time, and says, hey, this is a grant we might be able to apply for.
Right.
But also, we just have really good success with getting grants because we complete the projects on time, we do them up to the standard they want,
Got it.
we file all the paperwork, everything's done efficiently, and
Within
that makes them,
budget,
and they're much more likely
Yeah.
to consider us
Yeah.
favorably the next time around when we do that, so.
So the income from the state and then town, that's what taxes from the town
Mhm.
contribute to it together.
Right,
And this has been done to match,
right,
has it,
yep.
so,
So it's based on the highway budget. So they look at the regular maintenance budget and then the winter maintenance budget. And they extrapolate certain budget items, whether it's sand and gravel and, labor and all of that stuff. So, and then they come up with these numbers. So there's a formula that Megan works with, and all the math is in there. But it's pretty straightforward.
I don't know enough about what they're doing to know, anything about it, but I trust Brian and you and
Yeah, no, I mean, it's
Seems pretty
just
straightforward.
what it is, it's
Yep.
really just.
Yeah.
So we need to approve this, is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, motion to approve the annual financial plan for the town highways as presented.
And second,
It's been moved and seconded to approve the town financial plan for highways as presented. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous again. It's amazing. We're batting 1,000 on this one, aren't we?
So you can sign it right, I guess it doesn't matter, second one would be good.
Let's see, and it is 4/10/19, I believe.
yep.
Yes,
Good.
thank you.
VCDP loan, Putney Landing, public hearing, so you can
All right.
go ahead.
So, yeah, Putney Landing, the development is complete. It's been done since about June. And I think they've got one empty apartment over there right now. But, so this is a Vermont Community Development Program grant.
Okay.
So it's a housing grant. So what happens is Wyndham, Windsor Housing took on the project, built the 18 units over there, and the town receives the grant money,
Mm-hmm.
and we turn around and loan it to
Got it.
the housing authority.
The middleman again, like you
Yes,
described.
yeah.
Okay.
So the money came through, it was $490,000.
Okay.
So, and there's a check that's going right back out today to Wyndham, Windsor.
Good.
So what has to happen to close out the project, the loan process and, the grant process, is that the select board has to have a public hearing.
Huh.
So you have to warn a public hearing, like 30 days in advance. So I'm thinking we're gonna be doing, May 8th. And then,
Is that, are we 30 days out? No.
well, we will be when I get back, right?
No, I know, but if we can't do May 8th if it's, unless we warned it today.
Right, so it might
30
have to be
days.
the 22nd.
So whatever, yeah.
Yeah, so we have to have a public hearing, basically to close out the project. There's nothing to update, honestly, and there's no action to be taken. It's just a regulation that we have to,
Let the public know that we're gonna pass this check on.
That
Project is
that
done.
we have and we're closing on it.
yeah.
It's basically an opportunity for public comment.
Got it.
So typically nobody comes to them. We open the hearing, we,
Yeah.
give a little update and we close the hearing.
Got it. So those buildings are owned by
Wyndham Windsor
Wyndham
Housing
Windsor
Trust.
Housing, and that's for it's low income housing. You have to
Yes.
qualify to get there. Is it subsidized by the state partially or fully, or I don't really know anything about that.
I don't
project,
really
so-
know. I honestly don't
And
know.
really, we're
I
just
didn't
acting
ask.
as the middleman for the money so that they could do this project. And the town voted that in.
Very small portion, I mean, this money, that was I can't remember what their total budget on that project
I
was.
was gonna say, it seemed like a small amount of money.
It's a small amount of money.
Yeah.
That, we talked about that before, that there are several organizations that do this, VCDP is one of them. But then there's also just straight up federal money that
Right.
comes to them, et cetera. They are supported, I don't believe any of these are what are called voucher living spaces, i.e.,
Section 8.
used to be called Section 8, it's
Section
no
8, right.
longer.
Right, okay.
So I could be wrong, they might be, I just can't remember on this one. But, so essentially, their whole process is based on percentages, you have to qualify in order, for example, a one bedroom down there, I think, well, they might not have one bedrooms in that one, but one bedroom's $480, something like that.
Yeah.
Which if you compare that to a one bedroom
Yeah.
on the open market, which is more like 800.
Anyway. Right.
Exactly.
1,000, yeah.
But you have to qualify, they have different ranges of income for different people who qualify for different rents. So depending on how the project is structured, I believe this is all roughly a 30%. So your rent can't be more than 30% of your income.
Right.
I get it.
So you have to qualify for that by having an income below X,
And then
whatever
the
it is.
state or whatever was funding it supplies the other 70%.
Well, I mean, actually not so much. I mean, the idea, there is that, but the idea is that you're running them, because they're nonprofits, you're running them on a budget that's sustainable. One like this, it's super insulated, they're very efficient units.
Right.
These are long-term loans, which technically, after, when the loan expires, typically on something like this, they will refinance. So and there's no payments on the loan. So that's what makes it affordable, is that they're not having to pay out. You know, they purchased the property at a reasonable price, they've gotten grant funding to pay for the construction, et cetera, and then these loans that they get to sustain the building are renewed, they're rolled over time. So they're really not making any payments in order to have that going. So the rent money goes directly into management and upkeep of the buildings. So the idea is that it's, you know, what they're focusing on more and more now with affordable housing is what they're calling perpetual affordability. So that's why there's a huge focus on energy conservation and also quality construction. I mean, it used to be that they slapped up affordable housing so that they had space. Doesn't work that way at all anymore. I mean, they're relatively expensive per square foot, but the idea is they're gonna last. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So you won't be slapping up another one in 30 years.
You hope not.
Right.
Yeah. But they do these rollovers every, you know, when the loans come up, they do rollovers. They usually take that, put some of that money back into updating it and upgrading, et cetera. You know, it's a whole process of cycling through.
But none of that involves us
No.
at that point.
No.
We're only involved
No.
right now and
Yeah.
being the middleman for the money.
Yeah.
We're
No.
a pass-through, it's a
Yeah.
pass-through loan.
Yeah, got it.
The only burden, and they pay taxes. They have a reduced tax rate compared to what their appraisal, what it would be.
Yes,
What's the percentage?
Ballpark,
that was a question for Carl.
Sorry. I'm so new, I know nothing.
Carl would know, no, he wouldn't know that offhand.
But it's a good question.
Ballpark 50%.
Yeah.
I would say 50 to 70 maybe. It depends on the project, it depends on the town, but there's a whole sort of formula for how
Formula,
that
yeah,
works. The only other burden on the town, I mean, we receive taxes, but they're slightly decreased. So that's, you know, you could consider that a burden, that we're not getting full taxes. The other is emergency services, and I actually
Right.
just had a conversation with Tom about this the other day.
Uh-huh.
He's very clear that although they do go to both the Plant's House and to Putney Landing, that there's nothing extraordinary about it at all. He said, you know, occasionally there's an oddball one where you think, this might not happen somewhere else, but
Right.
the vast majority of the time, he said they're just straight up medical calls or, you know, a couple small fires, you know, a little kitchen fire,
Okay.
that kind of thing, but they do not, you know,
They're not
historically,
there.
there's been a huge complaint that they're gonna be a big burden on emergency service. Not the case with these.
We're not in risk in any way in the future if whatever the relationship is between, I forgot.
Wyndham Windsor.
Wyndham
Yeah.
Windsor and whoever they roll over the loan with.
Nope.
That will not leave that building empty down there because we end up with these buildings that don't belong to the town but belong to them, and we can't tax them because of their arrangement with whatever the long-term loan is. We're not involved in that in any way. We're not.
No.
No,
Great.
no.
And again, the way these are structured is to, you know, in theory anyway, be very sustainable. I mean,
Okay.
these organizations, the organizations that loan to them, for example, also give them organizational grants. So VCDP and or VHCB and or others give them X amount per year just to support Wyndham Windsor in their mission.
Got it.
So that helps underwrite the whole
Practically, yes,
process.
even though it's a loan.
Exactly.
I got it. Okay, I got it.
And it all just works, you know, sort of goes round and round, so. So public hearing date for the 22nd of May, you're thinking?
Probably,
Okay,
just to wrap it up.
so you should just make sure, it doesn't matter, you know, we should have it on a regular night.
Yes,
because- so
yeah,
we
no,
don't
I would
to
have
do-
it like 15
So
minutes
whatever.
before a regular meeting.
So whatever works for you for morning time.
Yep,
Do we have a deadline as far as having that meeting?
no,
I mean, if it doesn't happen till June, it's not gonna,
no, I asked
Cause any
that
problems.
question, so.
okay. All right, appoint committees and boards. So we have that one again. And I think we should, so we will.
Look at all the volunteers.
Yes. We'll,
Put your hands up, David.
I think we
Sorry.
Cut it out.
No.
we can cross off the tax exempt properties committee,
Okay.
because Carl's gonna do that work, and I don't think we have a mission for them otherwise right now anyway. affordable housing has not met in a while, but I think we should still have it as an active and otherwise.
I agree with that.
And public safety, we should talk, I mean, you know, honestly, at some point before too long, we should probably have sort of a mission discussion about all
Roundtable.
of these, exactly,
Yeah.
and maybe invite, you know,
Yeah,
chairs from them, et cetera, and see whether we can have discussions about
right.
what they'd like to be doing, if they can do anything, and or what we would like them to do.
Right, and that's the comment I've gotten back from a few of these groups. And we haven't done anything, and the select board should task us with
Yes.
something.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they're kind of waiting for the select board.
yeah.
So clearly, each one of these boards has a job, you know,
Yeah.
definition, what
It's
they're
like
supposed
color
to do.
coordinated, but I didn't tell you what the colors in
You know,
it. The orange, those people actually responded and got back to me and said that yes, they wanted to. The
And
ones
then
with no
what
color,
that is.
they didn't respond, but the
It's
teams, like the
each
letter
one of
didn't say
these.
they had to.
Oh, you know,
She
so-
was, yeah.
It just asked if they would update their information and let me know if they didn't want to.
So orange got back to you.
Yeah,
Red, there's just
no
no
contact,
response,
no nothing.
no way to contact them. Now, Alyssa did send letters out to everybody
Mhm.
and stated, if I don't hear back from you, I'm gonna assume that you still wanna do it.
Got it.
And if any of your information has changed, please get back to me.
Mhm.
So the ones in red didn't respond.
Mark has, I know Mark fell and broke a hip at some point not too long ago. Francis should be available, but, you know, I think,
It might be a hard time for them.
Yeah. yeah, so.
So can I ask a question though?
Mhm.
So the yellow, like Conservation Commission, there's more than just Ann Carey on there.
Yeah,
We're
And,
gonna not fill it in? No, she's the only one that was up.
that's right,
okay.
because these are
These are just people who are
Alright.
up.
on
right.
cycle. So this
Right.
isn't, yeah, this
I'm
isn't,
with
these
you
aren't
now.
the whole
Okay.
committees.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
Because I'm
Okay,
looking at the
okay.
Energy Committee and saying, wait a minute, I have 4 people on that committee. Okay, I'm with you now.
And some of these, public safety, for example, you know, we have been just doing as an annual appointment. So in that case, the whole committee is on there because it's annual.
Right.
But when it's a 2 or 3 year term, which most of these sort of aren't, but go ahead.
So what would a person on the public safety committee typically do? What, I mean, this is all new to me, so.
So I think the last task they had, Josh, was the Wyndham County Sheriff's contract,
Yeah.
correct? So they all met and went over the contract and did discussions with, you know,
And then
Town
drop their
manager
findings
and-
here.
yes,
Right,
yeah,
okay, I
yeah.
get it. I just
Yeah.
wanted-
And then,
I see.
and same, you know,
Thank you, that makes a
Yeah.
lot more sense.
yeah.
same for rescue, you know, they review, you know, anything that's public safety related that becomes a question for us, we can call on them.
And we
to
can say, here's a
Exactly.
task, could you do this?
Right.
Right, I got it.
And, you know,
Yeah.
but what Alyssa was saying about, you know, we haven't tasked them, that's true.
Right,
You know, recently, for example, I mean, Energy Committee, we could task them, as you were talking about earlier, if we want to look at renovations in this building. We could, and they've looked at this building before,
Right.
definitely. We could ask them to explore whether there are
Revisit,
significant savings we could.
When that was happening, I was thinking, there's no sprinklers in this building. It's like,
Right.
why there's public meetings at the school? And, you know, would that save us enough taxes to offset putting the sprinklers in, and how would that?
Unfortunately, it's not big enough to have town meeting out
Oh,
there.
that's what
Right.
it is.
Yeah.
So how is it that we cannot have sprinklers in this building? How is it that?
Because we
it's
don't-
grandfathered in, right?
Well, it's also numbers, it's
Mhm.
just based on numbers.
Yeah.
How many
If you're gonna
people
have a
could be in
gathering,
there?
exactly,
Of
if you're gonna have,
25 people or whatever.
right, I mean, this room has a capacity of X, you know.
Right, okay.
At any given time, there's not likely to be more than, you know, whatever it might be, 42 people in the
Right.
building. If we were to have, you know, like there used to, I mean, town meeting used to be up there.
Right.
Right.
But, you know, even, I don't know what it was, probably 15 years ago, they were using it sort of as a gallery and having open space and so on and so forth. Those were public gatherings, and you'd have to, anything like that,
Right.
where you're opening the door and saying, everybody's welcome. I mean, a town meeting, you know, a select board meeting is different because nobody comes anyway. But,
Right, no, I understand.
but if you're inviting 200 people to something,
Right.
it needs to be sprinkled. But it's also a question for Tom as to how much of that, this building probably should be sprinkled.
Well, you're always thinking that, yeah, would it save money in insurance if it was sprinkled? Would that offset the cost of putting the sprinklers in? How would that affect the historical committee?
Right.
I mean, of course, historical
So-
committee's a good thing to have,
Right.
and, you know, you wanna.
I think
how
when
would
you
that
start
Figure into the bigger picture of everything.
opening things up and doing renovations, because I know Westminster had to do sprinklers on the
Right.
second floor.
Right,
And he,
you lose that grandfathering,
right.
yeah.
So,
And then what happens if you lose that?
Well, if you're not if you're doing, that's triggered by I think it's triggered by the percentage of the building that you're doing. But if you're doing a certain amount of work, they'll require you to come up to code.
because it's a
Got
public.
it. So that opens
Yes.
up a whole
Yes.
can of worms.
Exactly.
I get it. Okay.
Opens
All
up
right.
the front door, David.
I gotcha.
And
This
guess
is
what?
why I
That's where the money, that's where the money goes out, right out that front
That's
door.
right. Bring it in the back door and take it out the front.
Yeah. So we have to be cautious
Got it.
and make sure we have all our facts before.
And
Thank you for
And-
answering that.
And be clear with Tom, you have clear information from Tom
Right.
as to what triggers what,
Yeah.
basically.
So could we, if, doing this for the historical society opens the door for problems for us and losing, being grandfathered, depending on what percentage of the space they're using, is what you're saying. And that could,
Well-
if that happened, that's something we want to be really careful about.
Well, it depends also on how they use it, I think. For example, we could put in the lease, you can never have a meeting with more than 25 people.
Right.
And that would
you know.
change Tom's criteria probably completely, because he's looking at it as a public space.
Exactly,
Right.
and he's
Okay.
looking at what the potential occupancy is
Right.
and what you'd have to do again to deal with that.
And so is Wade.
Exactly.
Wade's doing the same
So-
thing.
And Wade, our insurance is through the VLCT, which is the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. They run a program for insuring towns in the state of Vermont. The passive program, and I can't remember what that stands for, but we're currently insured through them. We have at times not been insured through them. But like that question of how something affects our insurance, I'm amazed in general how little things affect our insurance. And I think that's partly because as municipal insurers, they're used to insuring just about everything and everything.
Right.
So unless you really sort of go out on a limb,
Right.
they're pretty much saying, yeah, it's covered,
Gotcha.
I mean, occasionally something will bump it up, but it's
Right.
surprising what it does
I
cover.
So probably
Yeah.
wouldn't save us anything, and probably being grandfathered is the most economical thing to do. But we won't know until you talk to people.
Well, but then, like for the Historical Society, if they want to use that space, and because it's both a municipal building and they're moving a Historical Society, that might plug them into grant money that might
A
not
lot
otherwise be
faster.
available.
Right.
And all of a sudden,
There's an opportunity.
you can raise $200,000 in grant money towards a $220,000 project,
And then why wouldn't you upgrade?
Exactly.
And
that's sort of
honestly,
what
there's
we're
more
talking about.
money for historical
Uh-huh.
and for
Than
the
there is
his-
for
and
municipalities.
the historical society could tap into probably more money
Mhm.
than we can. There's
Got it.
different,
This is
Pockets
so
of money.
multifaceted.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
tell you. It's
Yeah.
gonna take.
there's a
me
lot of
forever
different
to
pockets, you
figure this
just gotta know where to look.
Wow.
So,
Yep.
And it's also, again, might not be a viable example, but for example, having a historical society in a municipal building might even open you up to specific grants that you wouldn't be open to
Right.
if you had a municipal building with a historical society next to it, or, I
Right.
mean, there's all sorts of quirky little things
Yeah,
about grants
yeah.
that happen that way, so. And Lisa, who deals with historic preservation, is very savvy about the grants that are available.
She is, yeah.
And why and how and stuff like that, so.
Call Tom, call Lisa. Sorry. Which board are they on here? Let's see.
All right, so, would you like to make a motion to approve the slate of appointees as presented?
Sure, I move to approve the slate of appointees as presented.
And I will second that, and it's been moved and seconded to approve the slate of appointees as presented. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, good. Yeah, just one question about that. The White Whitney, I mean, we had some conversation, so that's another one that needs to be revisited a little bit as to
Right.
what our oversight of them
I'm working on
has
that.
been, should be, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I've been
and
working
we
with
don't
them
know.
and, I haven't connected the dots and
Yeah.
I've talked to Anita, but, I have information, but I still can't connect the dots.
Yeah,
So I
And-
think we're here and we're moving forward.
yeah,
They're revising, their policy
yeah,
on how they do things and they wanna run it by the select board when it's ready,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, and often with something like that, you know, because the information is so long lost, we really just sort of need to do a reset
Right.
and just say, this is
Yeah.
how it's gonna work from here
Yeah.
forward. So their board would present us with something
Yeah.
along those lines.
So the
presumably.
White Whitney, David, they have stocks and bonds with Edward Jones.
Okay.
So two people created that White Whitney,
Somebody White and somebody Whitney.
Yeah.
But-
like back in 1924. So they left money to the town, okay,
Oh,
for
right.
poor people,
Got it.
okay, that need assistance.
Got it,
Alright.
so you could come
So-
to the town and say, my house burned down, or whatever, and I need some help.
Well, not that much. It's a limited amount.
I see,
So it's, I think, $250.
got it.
It's been more than that at times, but I
It
think
has,
there's
but-
the general.
Yeah, so what happens is they have this pocket of money that keeps earning interest. And the interest they can use
Got
for
it.
people in the community. And it's specific to Putney residents, because that's the way this committee was set up,
The way they grew
this
it.
fund. So they're trying to determine, like Josh said, some funds were, out there for more than the 250. So
Mhm.
they just want to tighten
I get it.
their policy up.
In order to fundraise, they need to know
Yeah,
more about their
Yeah.
structure.
and they can take donations. We're looking into that to make sure they're 501(c)(3).
Yeah,
Yeah, C3, right,
C3,
yeah.
yeah.
So somehow the information on that group has been lost. We're trying to pull it back together.
Which happens. I mean, the last one, different nature of the organization, but, we inherited, what's the cemetery that's right here, Mount Pleasant.
Yeah, yeah, there's another
from-
group right there.
And it came with a chunk of money, but nobody knew. I mean, the cemetery commission has, last I remember, it was 50 some odd $1,000.
They have less than that now.
They do,
Yeah.
yeah, they've been spending some of it down, but it was not, and certain aspects of those funds, in theory, were restricted, i.e. somebody gave, your great-grandfather gave X amount for maintenance of marble stones from the Barry Quarry.
Lord.
But you lose track of things
Sure,
like
right,
that.
right.
So then, and actually the person who was really knowledgeable about that was Laura Heller.
Got it.
And when she passed away, a bunch of
All that
information
information just disappeared.
gone, So, and then but there are legal steps you have to take when there are restricted funds that you don't know the nature of in order to be able to expend it on different things and so on and
Get
so
it.
forth. So
Yeah,
that's the kind of stuff you have to look at. But-
so we kind of just oversee, the select board oversees both of those groups.
Got it.
Okay. So when a request for, payment comes in,
Mhm.
it goes on the warrant, it's confidential.
Got it.
And that's about the extent of the select board.
Currently, yeah.
Yeah,
We listen to what they have to say about,
you don't even do that.
we don't
So
do that, they
a
decide.
letter comes to the town manager, we process the request,
Mhm.
and then the check is on the warrant. So you're signing that warrant with that check on there.
And, typically a request would be something like, a resident of Putney, exactly, needs $250 to become current on their outstanding bills with Green Mountain Power
Got it.
in order to retain electricity at their house.
Yeah, or somebody needs a cord of wood.
Or
For
somebody
heating,
needs
or car
some car
needs-
repair
yeah,
so they can
yeah.
get to work,
Yeah.
or, you know, any number of different
I
things.
get it, okay, okay.
Um,
Looks like there's
All right.
plenty of people here on it, and are these people all responded? The ones in red did not.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yep.
So,
Well, they were also here for a meeting recently, so
So that's-
Alyssa
Yeah.
probably.
good, that works good.
Yeah, this board is
Yeah.
very active.
Got it, okay.
All right. So we've appointed the committees and boards. Appoint the health officer. This is basically a formality. Tom is our health officer, has been since we essentially, well, somebody else was in the past, I can't remember who, but Tom took over that position because it goes right along.
Yeah, I read the packet.
Yeah.
I
It's
think
his term.
Yeah,
has
we
come up.
had an assistant health officer, right? I thought it was Mark Fellows or Chris
Yeah.
Fellows.
Certainly
Yeah,
could.
It was.
Yeah.
It's typically the assistant chief, yeah.
Yes, yep.
Um,
And every 3 years we have to do this
Got it.
through the state. The state,
So we're just saying,
Regulates
we've met, he's there, it's confident, he's our guy, we signed it
Yeah.
off, the state knows that, what they need is satisfied.
Exactly.
yes.
Got it, okay.
Yep,
So a motion to approve Tom Goddard as our town health officer.
And I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the town health officer, Tom Goddard. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
so we'll
Chair.
have Josh
Yep,
do
yep,
that
just
one.
read that. Thank you. Okay.
He has a little power.
Okay.
No illusions of
Yeah,
their
don't let it
power.
go to my head.
The illusions of power left of my youth.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Realities of responsibility coming into place.
Crashing down.
Did you sign the minutes?
Yes.
You
Did I?
did? You
Yeah.
have this? Thank you so much.
Okay, so next is town manager's report. You got anything for us?
I only have, well, we already talked about Putney Landing, which is great. And you already know I'm going on vacation.
That's good.
Most important part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Towns report. Yeah.
Yeah, so Alyssa will be my go-to. Houghton Brook Road.
Yeah,
So invitation to bid is ready to go into the paper. We're gonna solicit contractors. All you need to know about that is, there's a mandatory pre-bid meeting on April 23rd at 1 o'clock at the site. And
that's
then-
mandatory, not for you.
Not for
Okay.
you.
But you could attend if you wanted to.
Right,
It might be
yeah.
interesting.
Okay.
1, yep,
1 o'clock on a Tuesday.
yes,
Ah,
April
okay.
23rd.
That's it.
And it's mandatory for anybody who's
bidding.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
So if you don't show up at that meeting, you're not eligible.
Yeah.
So who represents the town there?
Brian.
Brian's there,
So
okay.
Brian will be there.
And Karen.
Okay.
Or,
I don't
well,
usually go, I
You
let,
don't,
yeah,
yeah.
I let
Just
Brian
let him do
go
his
and,
thing.
but I'm aware of, what's going on.
yeah,
And then, he'll meet with contractors, they'll have questions, they'll get plan sets. And then on Wednesday, May 15th, the bids will be due.
Mhm.
So anybody that wants to bid on this will bring a sealed bid to the town hall.
Got it.
We'll open it up, they're due by 2 o'clock. Sometimes contractors stay while we open them and announce the bids.
Okay,
And they write everything down, see who the apparent low bidder is.
yeah.
Once that's done, then I usually get with Brian.
Mhm.
And sometimes, we'll invite the select board in and we'll take a look at everything, make sure everything's in order.
Mhm.
And then Brian will usually make a recommendation to the board,
Mhm. We're not obligated to take the lowest bidder, is that?
No,
We are not.
We're
no, we
Okay,
are not.
right, good.
So the town reserves the right to reject any and all proposals or to waive any specifications or requirements when determined to be in the best interest of the town.
Got it, okay,
So that language is in the invitation to bid.
got it.
So once that's done, let me see, May 22nd is a select board meeting. So the recommendation will be made to
probably
award.
come to us on the 22nd.
Got it.
Okay?
And then we decide
Yep.
on, got it.
And Usually what'll happen is, again, so we'll have a list of the contractors, we'll have their bid amount, so you can look at all of it. But that's how we've been doing them.
And our decision is typically based on previous experience, reputation of the company, but also, there are certain things, as we talked about with the sidewalk bidding process, that just automatically rule people out if they're not pre-certified, and that may not be the case on
Not
this
here,
one.
no.
But there are various different aspects that, if the criteria are not met, they're not there. The time that we usually sort of rule somebody out who's the lower bidder is either because we know that a project has not gone particularly well with them at some time in the past, or something significant in the bid just doesn't seem right.
Right, everybody else is bidding and they're 50% less, you're like, well, you bid anything you want, but you're not gonna do it for that.
Exactly,
Right.
or, well, wait a minute, everything's here except there's no price for asphalt, or no price for, the culvert, or this or that.
So normally too, you look at the low bid and you look at the high bid, and then you're really looking in between.
Yeah.
And we know what the cost is,
Yeah,
and that's a consideration.
sure.
That's the first consideration. Schedules always are affected, the contractors, if they can't meet our schedule.
Right.
And this particular project won't start until July 1st, because you can't get into streams until July 1st. So some contractors might be already booked through the summer.
Right.
They won't have time for this.
Right.
So,
And that's probably gonna close that road down for what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Not necessarily,
No.
not necessarily at all.
Holland Hill took
One on Hickory Ridge.
2 weeks.
Closed it for quite a while, remember that?
That's true, you were detoured around, yeah, no, that was different.
It was close.
Well, part of the reason that happened is because the borings were inaccurate,
Got it.
so they had to do blasting that they hadn't anticipated.
Right.
But usually it is sort of surprisingly straightforward, but also, like Holland Hill, it didn't technically close the road at all,
No, 'cause
because
he
there was a
had
little
that-
mini detour
right,
right
right.
there, which I assume that, well, they might not, because there's an easy
They can
detour.
go
but-
Signal Hill.
Right, exactly,
Right.
that's fine.
So, yes, Signal Pine, I always say Signal Hill. So this is like a 12x6 concrete, box, culvert.
It's just like.
Similar to Hickory Ridge.
Right.
said
It'll have wing walls in the footings and,
Sure.
but it might be closed, but I don't think it's gonna be closed long.
And, yeah, often,
Right.
I mean, like on Holland Hill, they did have to close, but the only day I think they actually closed was when they were actually craning the
When they
culvert
had the
into
crane there,
place.
yes.
So it's
yeah.
like a 2-day closure.
Right.
Got it, okay.
Actually, it might not have even been, might have just been hours, I can't remember. but-
Yeah, it was half a day, I think.
Yeah, exactly, because
Yeah, it wasn't
that was
even
their
a whole
only
day.
access,
Right,
so it
right.
wasn't even
Yeah.
anywhere.
So
All right.
that's gonna be happening.
Gotcha. Well, we on Black Locust noticed how long Hickory Ridge was closed.
Yeah, no doubt.
My mother let me know daily.
Yeah. Vehicle counts, yeah.
Anyway, but if it's only a week for something, a contractor, a week in July, to set them back too far.
Right.
Even if they're booked up.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a pretty good.
Well, this won't be a week, it won't be a week-long project, it would just be a short closure.
Right.
Probably the window, I mean, we would have a specified window of time, project must be completed within something like this, probably 5 weeks.
Got it.
Somewhere in that range.
Right.
So-
Who did the last one? Archie?
Archie
Archie,
has
yeah.
done the last 2.
Right.
And actually, I was gonna say, I mean, Archie was the low bidder on Houghton Brook, on Holland Hill, but we've had a really good experience with him on Hickory Ridge. There was no reason not to go with a low bidder in that.
Right, I understand, right.
If the low bidder had been a
Best
company
case
out of
scenario,
northern
both
Maine,
ways.
we would have said, I don't think so,
Right.
So, but that worked out well for us, so,
Okay.
The gravel pit, I just wanted to update you guys with that.
yeah.
So, the second deposit went to, Bob Fisher's office on Friday
Yeah,
for $10,000.
yeah.
I don't know, I forget what else was going on with that. I did email Larry, I have like 8 questions that he needs to get back to me on.
Okay.
Um,
And then the only other thing was the ESA stuff.
Dummerston is gonna approve that tonight to
Okay.
go with Miles' weight.
Yeah.
He is the low estimate at $3,000. It is required.
Environmental study.
Yeah, site assessment. So it's a phase 1 environmental site assessment. It's a prerequisite to our purchase and sales that
Got it.
we, as a buyer, do this.
Got it.
So, and it, I mean,
It's Act 250 related.
Gotcha.
yeah. And if there's any environmental risk,
We
then-
want to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we would want to know. But we don't suspect that. I did talk to Mike. He didn't have any ESA reports. And I also talked to Corey at Stevens, and they had never done any for the Renault pit. They're not qualified to do those. You have to have like an environmental engineer.
They certainly had to have them in order to get the Act 250 approval, so they must be somewhere.
I was gonna ask, it seems like if he's operating a pit there, he must have already gone through this, right?
He did, but when there's a transfer of property, you have to do it again.
Got it.
But Mike said he didn't think he had any, so. But
Have you been down there?
There's got to be
Have
something.
you been
Oh,
to
yeah.
that pit? I
Oh, yeah.
have not been to that pit.
You can go right in.
I'm gonna go look.
Yeah.
I
Just
talked-
drive right in through ABF.
Yeah, gotcha.
yeah,
The guy, actually, Dwayne, I don't know, is Dwayne still there?
he is right now.
Super nice guy who runs
Yeah.
the pit. He's the guy that'll be on the loader. If you go in, he'll happily
Yeah.
Great.
show you around.
So if
Okay.
you want to go down Tuesday, because Miles' weight will be going down to do the site inspection for the ESA.
Yeah,
Okay.
Tuesday's your day off, isn't it?
Yeah.
I tend to.
I see 5 people's names on the schedule.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's not. You know, we'll
You
work
can go
alone
anytime,
for an hour.
Dwayne will walk you down
All
there,
right.
so,
Okay,
it's just a big rock pile.
I get it. But it might be at least half our big rock pile soon, so
Yeah.
be nice to go look at it. So-
Karen, can you spell, Miles, can you spell weight for me, please?
WAITE.
Correct.
All right,
And that's it. That's all I
Warrants.
have. Need a motion.
You'll make a motion
Motion
to
to approve,
accept and
Accept.
execute
accept and execute the warrants to the treasurer
as
As
presented
as
presented.
presented.
There you go.
upon completion of review. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I seconded that, by the way.
Payroll warrant dated April 5th in the amount of $9,781.80. And this has the library on it.
You know, I don't know all these people. Sure you do.
You don't.
Great,
They're all important.
I'm sure.
As long as Alyssa's not on there like 8 times, you know it's probably
I
nice.
saw that first one there, I was thinking, like, who's that? So,
Yeah, I don't know how she gets on the top of the list every single time.
It's my initial.
Payroll warrant April 10th, 2019, in the amount of $6,497.19. So that would be highway and office. And Tom. Accounts payable, March 30th through April 12th, 2019, in the amount of $573,532.82. $4,212.67.
And the bulk of that is that Windsor payment?
Yep, so that payment was $490,000, which left just for the office, invoices, $70,132.79. So.
The cheat sheet? No, like it's just that front sheet is mostly
Yeah,
the
this
cheat
is your
sheet.
cheat
Yeah.
sheet right here. So here's
Got it.
Putney Landing. I don't know what else is on there. Medical
Is this for the
insurance.
sand pit? Is this, no, that's for what we buy.
That's our contracted
That's
gravel
for
payments. Yeah,
mud season, basically.
yeah.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Right. So you have medical insurance at $11,802.
That 10,000, oh no, that's Department of Tax.
No.
Oh no, Katie Dugan, that's the gravel pit payment.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep.
Gravel pit payment, insurance, the dispersal for
Mhm.
Putney Landing. And that's for what we're using at the road crew. What's Simon? What is that?
That is our contractor for the wastewater treatment
Got
plant.
it, you told me that last time, I should have.
That's
And
okay.
water, sewer and water.
Yeah.
Solid waste. What do we pay? What?
That's,
Oh,
no, that's Wyndham Windsor.
our assessment,
No,
not one of
Wyndham-
Windsor.
I know, Wyndham Solid Waste. So it's a quarterly assessment.
Huh,
They assess every town, and it's based on population.
Because we're a waste district,
Mhm.
so we
we're part
can't
of
use that.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so
That
this is
entitles
what
us
we
to
pay.
use.
Right,
that. Exactly.
right.
Wow.
Yeah.
The little stuff, you know.
Tim Franklin gets a much better deal. No, I'm kidding.
I know, right?
Well,
It's
you know,
like-
the frustrating thing is that this no longer includes, that used to
Yeah.
include our
I
recycling
understand.
boxes.
Right, yeah.
And it no longer does, and, I mean, that, we used to,
What do we get for that money?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Do we have the right to have people to go there?
that's basically it, and we are required as a township to have a municipal waste plan.
A plan, yes.
And
Yep.
so basically, that's what that is we pay them to have our
SWIP.
plan,
Yeah.
so that we, yes,
Huh.
this implementation plan or something, yeah. And so, and we could become our own district and have our own little
Right.
waste management.
Like
Facility
Rockingham,
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Transfer station.
Up there by the high school.
Exactly,
Yeah.
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 Huh.
Actually, I've mentioned this before, but my parents live in a very comparable sized town in Connecticut, in the northwest corner. Demographics, population, almost as everything is identical, and they have their own little facility that is a really nice little facility. So, their budget is about $170,000 a year for it, so it's not insignificant,
Right.
but it's not massive either when you look at sort of what the service they provide is. So someday we may end up looking at something like that.
All right, other business.
But what do you got?
So you did get a letter, HCRS. This is a thank you letter that we get from social service
Services, yeah.
agencies.
Okay.
So we appropriate
Right.
money and then we usually get a letter from them. So,
Well, that's nice, I guess.
yeah.
Thank you. Makes you want to help again next time, doesn't it?
Yes.
Absolutely.
The only other business is reinstate the town hall renovation committee. So based on the historical society. We can table that.
I think it's a little premature. I think
Okay.
I think once we know a little more information from Tom and a little more information from the Historical Society.
Yeah.
But I think, we should,
I'd like to talk to like
Sure. How do
Lindley
yeah,
or
exactly.
somebody on that committee and see how they feel.
I would imagine Lisa was also on
Okay,
that committee.
I'll talk to Lisa too.
Can I be on it?
You wanna be on it?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I would be,
As somebody who lives in town hall,
right,
Submit a
we should
resume.
have a representative of somebody who's going to
Yeah.
be affected by.
yeah, I don't mind you taking the lead on that. if you wanna oversee them. Maybe not oversee them,
I was gonna say, I didn't say that.
yeah.
I was gonna stay out of it, like, no comment.
All right, come on. No, I think it would be good to have somebody within town hall
Yeah,
involved in that committee.
yeah. Yeah, I think that, you know, the question, until we have a task for that committee, I
Correct.
think
Yeah,
we want
we
to
would talk to
Yeah.
Tom first and
Mhm.
talk, yeah.
and see whether we, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, if there's nothing else, we don't need an executive session, do we?
Absolutely not.
Good. Motion to adjourn,
Second,
there you go.
Next
All in
meeting,
favor?
aye.
next
Aye.
meeting, April 24th.
Next meeting, April 24th.
Just for me.
April 24th, yeah, that makes sense, 2 weeks from today.